We're on a mission today. Everyone's got water?
I do.
Perfect. Good. My drink goblins are ready. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to episode 68 of Trail Society, produced by our friends over at Free Trail. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
And it is officially race season. Whoa. You guys, I'm proclaiming it. Some of you would argue that it's never ended, but I think it's official. I think we are officially into the 2024 race season, and I am all sorts of jazzed about it. How are you guys feeling as, like, I don't know, the results keep coming in from like race weekend after race weekend, and people are traveling to races, and I feel like I'm trying to track down my friends who are gone to random places to run, and it's just like, it feels like we're finally actually in the thick of it.
I'll start. I haven't actually raced yet.
Nor have I. I have not raced yet either, but I've been at races. I'm traveling to races at this point.
Well, I've booked a whole bunch of travel to races, so it feels like I'm there. I still don't feel ready. I don't know. I mean, Keely already raced, so and she's got some more coming up, but yeah, I don't race my first race till May, and I don't feel like I'm ready yet. So
You've got time. You've got time and time and time.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm like kind of like, I feel like Thailand just happened, and then like it's always an interesting mix of having, personally, for like training stuff here in the ice and snow. It always takes me a little bit to get over the winter, but I'm so psyched because lots of the athletes I coach are already racing, so that's fun.
Yeah, Keely and I are staring down the chucking up barrel right now, just like, oh goodness, it is like in 3 weeks, I'm pretty sure. Keely, we're going to talk a little bit about your ripping off the Band-Aid of racing a little bit later, but yeah, you feeling like you're full on in the mix now?
I think so. Yeah, I think to Hillary's point, it still feels pretty close to Thailand. Maybe just because that was so freaking hard, but like it's only really been a little over, like it's barely been 2 months, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to keep reminding myself of that. I think a couple of people like have recently brought up to my attention that like, oh my God, like when's the last time you've raced? Like, welcome back. And I'm like, what? I raced 2 months ago, 112 miles through the jungle. Like,
did you see my vision quest?
So yeah, but no, I feel like in it now, definitely, like I'll talk about it later, but my first race back was like perfect rip off the Band-Aid kind of race. Like definitely didn't feel like I was ready to race either, but like had so much fun. So I feel really stoked. I feel like I finally figured out my pre-wedding part of my season. So that feels good. And it's apparently somewhere where we're all three going to be. So that's going to be so fun.
Yay.
Any guesses?
Transvolcania.
I mean, I was going to say there's tons of hints. We've already said it, but yeah, it's official.
Oh man, I'm just bursting at the seams with joy. If people are watching the YouTube, you know I think it's race season because I finally got my hair cut for the first time in like 7 months. And so the bangs are back, people. That means that I am on the mic and ready to go. I don't commentate without these puppies.
They're great. I love it. Commentating bangs. Let's go.
Yeah, they're a necessary part of the uniform at this point. We'd be remiss. We've got to give a shout out to, I think they're our third loves in all of our life, probably, but that is our presenting sponsor, the folks over at The Feed. I'm once again grappling with Steven over waffles on a daily basis, but if you also want to try a whole slew of products, literally, I am at this point nutrition agnostic, The Feed being my only source of my nutritional needs, which is fun because that means I really get to mix and match. And if you want to try that too, you can go over to www.thefeed.com/Trail Society, and there you can get a $60 credit to use over the course of the year, $15 every quarter. What have you guys tried out recently on runs or rides?
Well, I recently tried this. It's one of my favorite things, actually, because if I'm not sure exactly what to try, I can kind of do like a variety pack. And there's been some new things coming out from spring that are a little bit like denser. So I kind of put some of those, like they're with oatmeal. So they're kind of a spin off of the Wolf Pack. But
yeah, Kelly Wolf's original like oatmeal.
Yeah.
It's like a 300-calorie oatmeal pack. It's delicious.
Right. But these are a few different ones. So they had some fruity flavors with the oatmeal in there. And then I kind of threw in some, I guess like listening to a bunch of podcasts, reading some new things about, carbs are king. So, I threw in some 90 carb packets of gels in there from Precision, and I'm excited to try them. I mean, I think I'm first gonna try them on a bike first because I think it's a pretty big gut bomb. But I do really already like the Marten. What's it? I think it's the 40 gram of carbs that they have. That one's really good. I could try that running. So I'll see how I like it. Yeah.
All the hydrogels are pretty similar from like a taste and consistency perspective.
I love the taste. I love it.
Little marshmallow jello shot. Keely, what about
you? So I have a funny story about the feed. The other day I was riding my bike with my friend Rachel, and she was a guest on the pod last week. But anyways, we were talking, and out of the blue, she just goes, "I freaking love the feed."
She's so cute.
She's like, I need to go back on. Use your guys' code. I need some more food. And then I'm like, "Have you tried the waffles yet?" She's like, "No." And I'm like, "You got to try them." So she just sent me a picture of the Oreos, cookies and cream, waffles. And she's going to try those, and I'm so excited.
Did you instruct her on how to toast them properly?
Yes, I did. Don't you worry. Anyways, so obviously I love those. But this week there's actually like a deal on the Bonk Breaker bars, and I had never tried them before, but my dietitian / who also has been on the podcast, Dr. Pritchett, loves them. I don't know why, but she like always orders them and tells me to order them as like a good protein bar or just like a good snack to have on the bike or running that's not a gel. And so I got a bunch of those this week because the flavors actually are really good. There's like a peanut butter and jelly one, and they go down super easy. So if you guys are looking for a new bar that is like really versatile and also sits really well in the stomach, I highly recommend those.
Nice. So again, you can go over to www.thefeed.com/Trail Society. Keely, we've got a lot to cover today. Hillary got a lot to cover today, but you dropped in what we're calling the little baby news section. And it's not about actual babies. It's just going to be a short little blip before we dive into some Black Canyon stuff. And actually our interview as well is going to be with second place female finisher Becca Windell, and we can't wait to introduce her to you all. But before that, there's some stuff heating up in the WNBA that Keely has to bring to our attention.
Yeah, so as an ex-basketball player, I feel like I track this a lot, and there's just a ton of hype around women's basketball right now through the NCAA and the WNBA. And Sabrina Ionesco, she set a record for the most three-pointers made during a three-point contest like a month ago. And this was at the WNBA three-point contest. She shot from the WNBA line with a WNBA ball, obviously, because she plays in the WNBA. But anyway, she has the record now. And so after that, Steph Curry and her decided to face off because Steph Curry's kind of like the G at three-pointers in the NBA. And so they set this three-point contest up for last Friday or Saturday. And they were going to initially play, apples for apples. Like Sabrina was going to shoot from the WNBA line with the WNBA ball. He was going to shoot NBA with the NBA ball. Makes total sense. That's what they play. Last minute, she was like, "Nope, screw that. I'm going to shoot from the NBA line." And just like full on was like, "No, I want this to look like legit and be like as even as it can be." Obviously, given that she doesn't shoot from that 3-point line as her normal 3-pointer. And she ended up coming up a little bit short to Steph's final score. So she scored 26 3-pointers in that round. Steph scored 29. So he ultimately got the title between the two of them. But she tied the winner of the actual 3-point contest, Damian Lillard, at his own game. So it was just so cool to watch because like the respect between her and Steph Curry is amazing. Like he was so stoked for her and also looked terrified when she was really close to beating him. And it's just so cool that she like tied the actual winner of the 3-point contest, like who was in the men's league. And so just cool. She kind of just comes off that and basically says that, if you can shoot, you can shoot. It doesn't matter, who you are. And so I think it's just a really cool time for women's basketball, especially like little girls watching that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like I can be that someday." That is really cool.
That's super, super, super impressive. Yeah, it's women's sports. We're in the up and up. I ordered a sweatshirt. It has not come yet. I'm a little bit scared that it may never come from Together. And they put out a line of sweatshirts and t-shirts that says, "Everyone watches women's sports." And I'm like waiting with bated breath for my hoodie to get here with that like big and bold across the back of it. So when I do get it, I'll send you guys a photo of it. But
wear it backwards on the pod.
I'll wear it backwards on the podcast with the hood just kind of flapping around over here. Yeah, we'll make it happen. You also put in an interesting new paper called a recent article that came out called "The Knowledge of Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport," or also known as REDS or RED-S. among physiotherapists and physicians, including OB-GYNs, sport docs, ortho surgeons, et cetera. And I think that's actually really interesting because I think a lot of us have a beef with I've got a lot of medical providers in my life. Keely's on her way to medical school. My husband's a doc. My parents are docs. Like I love the doctors in my life, but I think have a beef a little bit with like the medical system when it comes to like being behind on some of these topics. So I'm really curious to know what it said and if I should be really upset about it.
I think your frustration is warranted given the data from this very specific study. Because in this study, almost 90% of practitioners were not aware of REDS. And again, this is including OB-GYNs who study female physiology and in my opinion, should be aware of this disorder, and sports docs and orthopedic surgeons. And not only that, but almost half of the gynecologists would prescribe oral contraceptives when presented with symptoms of REDS. And so they're still, thinking that the symptoms of REDS are cause for concern in the sense that this person needs to be put on oral contraceptive to
elicit their period, right?
To get a period, which is a Band-Aid again. And it's not like we've talked about this last week, but oral contraceptives are not been shown to actually improve bone health, or like save your bone health when you're not having your period. That just masks the issue. And so again, that's a kind of a no-no that hopefully we start to educate these practitioners on, that this is maybe not the right answer for these symptoms. And then I will say, like, to not be a negative person all the time, because I don't think I'm that negative. There was one little like star from this study where the sports docs were the most likely to know what it is. So they were over 75% of the sports docs in this cohort knew what REDS was, which is awesome.
And that makes sense.
But doesn't, yeah, exactly. It makes total sense. I think the thing that's most alarming to me is that it's great that sports docs know REDS. However, when you're seeing your sports doc, you're most likely broken from REDS, not like seeing them proactively because you're seeing them yearly for your annual physical. So I think that while it's great sports docs know what REDS is and they can potentially talk to someone who has a bone stress injury or an injury about this, the preventative measure would be to let the primary care physician know about REDS so that they can see these athletes every year or every couple six months or so and actually talk to them about this and look out for those warning signs so that they don't get to the sports clinic because they have a stress fracture or they have an injury. So I still think a lot of work has to be done. So I think your frustration is warranted, Corrine.
Well, that's scary too, because while obviously, we're 3 female athletes. We think about this a lot through that lens. That like, if they don't know that it happens in female athletes, they definitely are unaware that it happens in male athletes. Mm-hmm. And that is also just like very alarming, right? That like at a guy's annual checkup, they'd be like, oh yeah, so you're injured a lot and you have like no libido and like, oh yeah, it's probably like maybe you run too much. I don't know. Like, it's just like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, we need to come a little bit further along than maybe you run too much. Maybe running's bad for your health and think of it more holistically than slapping Band-Aids on things.
Totally.
This is why Keely's going to medical school. She's going to fix the system from the inside out. We're calling it now.
Those are my goals.
Okay, we got to give a shout out to one set of results before we dive into like the actual kind of extended meat and potatoes of this show, because it's Black Canyon heavy. Although we know that you've probably already listened to a lot of recap shows, so we're gonna try to be a little bit different, a little bit contrary to that. But have to give a shout out to the folks that raced Tarawera over the weekend, specifically in the 100K, because it's been the like kind of preeminent distance for a long time there. Ruth Croft is a baddie. Takes the win there. I think that was her first 100K back in the day, maybe. She's a Kiwi. So that makes sense. Took the win, I think finished 4th overall. Dan Jones, who we saw race a phenomenal run at Western States this past year, kind of came under our radars from that, took the men's win. And US's own, Boulder's own, I know that Hilly runs with his partner Amanda a bit. Justin Grunwald took 2nd there. And it was really cool because it came off the back of him kind of talking publicly about dry January and just his history with drinking out, like with probably like a functional degree of alcoholism, and really like recognizing that his relationship with alcohol wasn't serving him or his athletics or his personal life. And if you want to hear Justin talk about that, Dylan Bowman and the Free Trail podcast put out an interview with him just about a week ago, and it's delightful. I listened to it on my long run this weekend, and I thought it was really great getting to hear kind of Justin's backstory heading into Tarawera. So I'd give it a shout. I'd give it a listen. Anything you want to add, Hilly, about the Grunewald Basham household?
Just that I'm a fan. I actually thought of Amanda today on my run because I was like running in short sleeves, and it's like what a joke for it's 50 degrees and warmer, and she's in a tank in like a sports bra. So I was like running in my sports bra today, sending her a picture.
Yeah, she's currently 15 days in a row of solo parenting too, which is just
I know.
like brutal.
I've been texting her. She's like, so sorry, I fell asleep. But no, but then the other thing is I talked to Justin in person about kind of the whole journey with alcohol stuff and dry January. And yeah, it was really cool. His interview was awesome. So it was good to see like kind of the insider info, and always a big fan of that household. Can't wait for those two girls to get running.
Yeah, to realize what their parents are up to. Like just they're adorable, but I do know that they're a handful. And the solo parenting that she does while Justin's working in Minnesota, I think is, man, I don't envy anyone having to put in treadmill miles super early while you sneak around nap times or kids being asleep. I know a lot of you listening actually do that kind of stuff, solo parenting or not, just because like that's the reality of having kids and continuing to pursue stuff. So kudos to the parents out there who are getting it done. Speaking of parents, we had a bunch of parents show up to Black Canyon, a little closer to home. Aravipa, I think Jubilee is technically the race director of it now, with Jamil moving over to doing more and more of the live broadcast side of the things. It was so cool. I was there in the flesh with the microphone. Keely was there helping out. And I think where I want to start this, if you guys are okay with it, is I've been thinking a lot about Black Canyon, but mostly about the allocation of golden ticket races, which I think some of you might find interesting. Some of you might not be that into it. But it feels kind of funny because historically we've had like race after race after race in the spring in the US leading into Western states, be it Bandera into Black Canyon, into Gorge, into Lake Sonoma, into Canyons Endurance Run, et cetera. Like there's always been like, a couple races in the spring building into Western states. And it dawned on me that Black Canyon is the first and last golden ticket, or first and second to last golden ticket race of 2024 in that build up to Western states. And I'm wondering if you guys have noticed that feels different as we build towards the big dance in June.
I mean, I think it does, because I think also the races that are now added to the qualifier list are so different than Bandera was back in, last year when it was in January. Like, I think they've added a lot more gnarly races, and they're a lot earlier in the season. So it doesn't feel like it's like, I'm building for Western states. Like this is all part of the plan.
Qualifying in like August of 2023 for running a race in June of 2024.
Running through the Swiss Alps. And it's just like, that's so different than running like Bandera, which is like a hot, dusty course, or Black Canyon, which is like a hot, dusty course, or Canyons, which is on the course. Like those all feel like progressive towards states. Same with Lake Sonoma, even. It's like, a rolly California course, like in April before June. So yeah, it is a very different vibe, at least in my opinion, because I think also as I look at this list, like 4 out of the 8 are very different kind of races compared to states. Like they're just not really comparable, I don't think, to what Western states.
And so we can list those, like CCC in August, Grindstone 100 kilometer in September, Nice Côte d'Azur 100K in September, Javelina 100 mile in October, Doi Inthanon 100 mile in December. That's a rugged freaking race.
Except for the heat. That's the only aspect of it that makes sense.
But it's a wet heat, Hilly.
Well, I know, but still, like, I mean, maybe someone's like, hot races, here we go, let's prepare. It's
I need this.
It's just like every other race is like sub 14 hours, and then Doi Inthanon's like, and go over 30 for this one.
Western states will take you half the time, and then Black Canyon 100K that just happened, and then Canyons Endurance Run 100K that will happen at the end of April. So that is the current list for for 2024. I believe they don't always stay the same, like because the international races have filled the shoes of what used to be the Ultra Trail World Tour spot allocations, because they do want international runners to come into it. Tarawera was a golden ticket race last year. UTMB was a golden ticket race last year, et cetera, different than this year. And I think in May, we will know what the races will be for 2025 Western states. So I'm curious to see what changes, right? What
Yeah.
stays the same, what changes, right? Hoka is the title sponsor. It's the Hoka Golden Ticket. So I imagine that they will stay Hoka affiliated, which largely means that they'll probably stay UTMB affiliated as well. And so we'll kind of see what that looks like. But I'm really curious to know or see if that landscape changes at all between now and whenever they deem the watch. It'll be like a July Golden Ticket race. You'll be like, cool, you've got 11 months to prepare for Western states.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just different. It's like, on one hand, it's amazing that we're giving these opportunities to a lot of people internationally. But I think what's happening is that a lot of women in the States who normally would have, 4 to 5 to 6 Golden Ticket races within their grasp to go attend are now flying to these other races, right? Because there's just not many opportunities anymore. So yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic. I'm interested to see what goes through for 2025 also, because I could see it changing. But then again, because of the affiliation with the Hoka, like with the brand and with UTMB, I also could see it not changing. So yeah, I'm really interested.
Yeah. And I don't think they have to be UTMB races, obviously, but I think that because Hoka has been such a primary sponsor for them, that it's kind of the horse and wagon are hitched together, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we'll see kind of what that looks like. I mean, that's why like Black Canyon, right? They wanted a super competitive race. And also Black Canyon was a super Golden Ticket race with 3 tickets on the line, which I think was cool. I think that was a good way to draw in both some international competition and just make a super competitive race in February, which was literal bananas to watch unfold.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Right? I think literal bananas tracks. Okay, to dive into this, we'd be remiss to not talk about the fact that the race started 2.5 hours late due to snow on the roadway getting out to the start line. I was in bed luxuriating because I didn't have to go into the live broadcast until what I thought was going to be 10 a.m. And I was like, oh, this is so chill. I'm going to like get up to give Eric and Joanna a hug, and then I'm going to go back to bed, and then I'll go for a jog, and then I'll go to the studio. And then I like check my phone before I go down to give Eric and Joanna a hug. And I've got a text from like the media crew that's like, race has been delayed by 2 hours. We're working to get the announcement out. And I like jump out of bed. I run down the stairs. I'm like, Eric, Joanna, stop. And then we like called Stephen Kirsch. I texted Rachel. Like it was chaos, it felt like. And I'm wondering, Keely, since you were crewing for Rachel, what that felt like outside of my little Adidas Terex Team House bubble.
Yeah, I think that Rach and Ty handled it really well. Like Rachel, talking to her during the race and also after the race, she seemed like pretty chill. And she's like, I think just being really mentally flexible helped me a lot because I didn't feel stressed from that. She just kind of viewed it as more time to go back to sleep and like readjust her plans a little bit. And so again, I think that paid off. I think you could have freaked out and been like, oh my God, I had my breakfast planned. I have my poop planned. I have all these things, right? And like, maybe they don't go as planned now.
I'd be like bonus pooping time
later. Yeah. And so I think like, yeah, she seemed really calm throughout it, which is awesome. And I think, speaks to going into a race feeling prepared. Cause like, if you're feeling like mentally prepared and like really tapered and have a lot of energy, then I feel like that mental flexibility that we talk about is going to be a lot easier to roll with those punches than if you're coming in like full of stress already. And then something like this happens, then stress cup's going to overflow. And then that's not going to be a very fun day.
Yeah. Hillary, have you ever experienced a big like race change up, be it a delayed start or a course change last minute or something that like through this like difference of adversity in where you like are either mentally ready to like roll with it or you're like, ooh, this is abrasive against my like cognition for the race. Cognitive dissonance.
Right. I actually haven't had like that. Cause I know when you did TDS, like there was a huge course change. Like that didn't happen. Like
and a delay that none of the Americans or Asians knew about, which was super fun.
So you're just like, on the start line in Corrine being like, yo, okay, what?
No one's here. This is weird. Yeah.
I have had for before TDS actually. I had kind of done all of the pre-race rigmarole that we needed to do, and basically something happened with that there was a miscommunication or like a box that was checked, but the people at Corrine said I didn't check it, of where I had to like deliver a blood sample. So it was like the night before the race. And I guess the people there was a miscommunication, they'd already left. And so I had to actually make a trip back to Chamonix, the night before the
Just driving through the tunnel, an expensive
tunnel, which
mistake.
is horrible. And then I had to come back again the same day because obviously the race starts at Corrine, to get this blood sample. And at the end of the day, they were saying to me, is like, actually, you just could have done this there. And I was like, I know, but because you have to take that stuff seriously. And I could have, at first it was kind of like panicking, but then at first it's like, okay, well, this is what I have to do. This is what's going to go. I'll just put my feet up in the car, and it worked out. But it helps to have that like calm mindset. And I remember even hearing some things from Hayden. He's like, yeah, like I just went back to sleep. I love running at 9. It's like,
I normally run at 9, and it's like, Ashley pulls a lot of weight around the house, doesn't she? That's what I thought. I was like, man, you've got 2 little kids and you normally get to run and sleep in and run at 9:50 or 9:30. Like, you're living a life of luxury, my friend. Don't tell Amanda Basham that your life is that easy, because I would track you down.
Just texting her, she's like, I'm so tired. I have another week of this. I'm like, man, I'm so sorry. And then her nanny bails half the time. Come on.
Nanny, if you listen to this, stop it.
Show up for your girl.
Cut it out. Your girl's gonna lose it. Yeah, no, adversity sucks, but I do think there were people that were really thrown by the weather, not being hot, being cold, thrown by the course conditions, being muddy, thrown by, having to change their nutrition, etc. Like, it seemed like there was some frazzled energy out there, and you end up burning matches unintentionally because you're just like, you're not willing to compromise or change from your initial race plan, which
yeah. And you see that in the men's race, they all flew out the gate, right? And like ran through that first section, which is way slower with all that mud, way faster than they should have. And then most of them combusted.
I called it. I said 40 men were going to be under course record pace at mile 12. And I'm pretty sure it was at least 40, if not more.
And in that terrain with that mud, you just shouldn't have been even close.
Yeah. I also want to reflect a little bit. There was a course change that was actually really cool, from like a spectator standpoint, because Deep Canyon Ranch is like sick. That's where the finish line for the 60K was. It was a cool atmosphere. There's a little bit of a river crossing getting crew there on Saturday. That seemed a little bit chaotic for folks that were driving like rental Teslas, for example,
or Dodge Chargers,
not equipped for a river crossing. I did not drive my rental car through it on Sunday because it did not sound good to begin with. I hitched a ride across that thing, even though it was way lower than it was on Saturday. But what that did mean too is that historically crew can see you at Bumblebee at mile 19, at Black Canyon City, which is like mile 36-ish or so. And then again at mile 51. This year with that change, there was no crew at Black Canyon City. So you saw your crew at mile 19, mile 31, and then mile 51. So there was like almost a 20-mile stretch where you weren't going to see crew. And Keely, from like the crewing side of things, and then from running it the year before, I'm wondering if you noticed like a difference as far as like how we were speculating ahead of the race, like that was going to like make or break people. And I'm wondering if you think it actually had any impact on the racers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely did, or at least in my mind, it should have, because if you go into mile 31, like you're halfway, it feels like still pretty early on, but you're getting like a ball of energy potentially in your pacer. And so I think you're probably less likely to stay long with your crew, and you're more likely to be like, let's just rally out of here, right? Like, let's go. And then you have 20 miles to just combust yourself. And so like, I think, yeah, it probably did combust some people, because like you're getting to mile 31 thinking like, oh, cool. Like this is a lot, but it's actually not, you still have that whole distance again to cover.
With like more climbing, kind of heading out of there.
Yeah. And so I think 37, I thought was better because
if it was hot too.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't hot, but if it was hot, that would be brutal.
And I think when it's at mile 37, it's after like 3 pretty punchy climbs. So you're already like kind of depleted, you're kind of hot, people are kind of falling apart. And so I think that mile 37 aid station, you're more likely to stop at and be like, okay, we're doing some control measures here to like make sure I feel okay. Whereas 31, so early on, you're still in the like mostly groovy state that you could just totally blow through it and then just find yourself totally gassed by mile 40 or 50.
Mostly groovy.
Yeah. But
so question for you guys.
I'm gonna be cool.
Question for you both. And this is like, I'm totally of the mindset, like if pacers are allowed, awesome, I'm taking them. I'm having 2 pacers. If they are allowed, I'm taking advantage of it, right? Because it's like, why pass up that advantage?
Yep.
Curious question for you. Do you think in a race like Black Canyon or Canyons 100K, where, the back of the field who's running into the dark, they have pacers because there's like a safety perspective there because they've got a 20-hour cutoff, right? For golden ticket races or for the front part of the pack, say the race is prize money or not, or say the race is a golden ticket race or not, like, do you think that we need or should have pacers at a race like this? Like, I just think it's interesting. Like, once again, if they're available, I'm taking them. But do we need them to be available? And how much would that change the race at the front end, like having that person or not? Because like there definitely were more than a handful of people in the top 5 who had pacers, at least for the final 10 miles, if not the like back 50K at the course. Hot takes only.
My first hot take is I've actually never run a race like
with a pacer.
I could use a pacer, so I don't know what it's like.
It's so much fun is what it is.
But also sometimes I get in these moods where it's like my best running partners, like they just know me and they know that I can, like, sometimes I'm a little bit curmudgeon-y. I think Corrine knows this. And then they just know to be like, oh, Hilly just needs some company right now. She just, like, if you ask her how she is, she's just going to start crying. So just give her a snack and like, let's keep going. But I don't know, but it's also I've been in races where but then I haven't had a pacer, but I've had like camera crews with me, but they're not necessarily helping me. And then, UTMB, there's just people around you all of the time. So I don't know. I mean, I get it from a safety standpoint, from like, animals and like, things like that. Like, I would have loved a pacer in Ultra Trail Cape Town in certain sections.
And they now allow pacers for a very specific safety reason during Ultra Trail Cape Town for the 100-miler for that reason.
Right. So there are some sections where I was kind of like had an escort like during some night sections. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it would be fun to try it, but I guess I can't really answer honestly since I haven't really been able to use one legally in races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't view it as do we need them, but are they helping advance the field? So like total different take than
totally
in the sense that like track and field has pacers. There's a lot of pacers.
They have rabbits.
They have rabbits. And so I think that if we think about this race on 2 different like tokens, one coin being potential, one coin being safety, I think safety makes sense. Pacing people who take a little bit longer, great idea. Also pushing them to their potential, great idea. I think pacers in the front of the field can allow the front of the field to push themselves a little harder. And I think that is cool, especially as the sport is evolving, where it's now a lot more of a foot race than like who combusts. It's like not many people combust anymore. So you got to have your stuff figured out. And so I think pacers could potentially just like make that stage elevated and like really push people to a new level, which I think is kind of exciting.
But do you think, but what happens then if people don't have they don't have the ability to help a friend come to pace? Like, so then it becomes a fairness question at the front of the field. Like
that's fair.
If the pacer isn't helping everyone, it's helping you. Like, and I don't know, like I'd actually be curious to ask Becca this, right? Like just being like, which we can, but it's one of those things where it's like, and it's one of those things, often it's a personal choice. You don't want a pacer or you don't feel like you need a pacer, but like if you had endless resources and you could have one, that's a little bit different than being like, it's, like Becca picked up her husband for the last 10 miles, but it was like, it's just a little bit different when it's like, is it available to everyone or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think if we did want to make it something that we can acknowledge does make people run faster, then maybe we do have a way to like offer pacers who are like vetted to run a certain speed for someone if they want them. But I think like to your point, it's tough because I think some personalities and some people don't actually want a pacer, and maybe
like Courtney has opted out of the pacer.
They might not push as well with a pacer. And I know some races where I've gotten a pacer, I'm like, actually, I probably would have been better off without a pacer. And so I think it's definitely like athlete specific, but I think it can potentially increase the performance. But and then if that is the case, how do we make sure that's fair? That's a really valid question.
But then also, if it is an advantage, then how do we measure that advantage?
Because exactly.
And then it's so personal. So it's always it's like last episode. It depends,
And we know actually that most world records, for example, they're not actually running in like the flying V formation. It's not a biomechanical advantage. It's an RPE. It's a rate of perceived exertion advantage. That there's the psychological component of it is what becomes performance enhancing in races where they can't mule for you, for example. So many philosophical questions left unanswered. And until then,
big question,
heck
but
yeah.
a good question. Yeah. Until
Heck yeah,
then,
all
I
my
will
friends.
always take advantage.
100%, 100%. Okay, well, we'd be remiss to not actually tell you what happened at the race. So we'll dive into like the blow by blow with our guest today, Becca Windell, a little bit. But we want to give a shout out our queen, Rachel Drake, taking the win, making MD PhD students and Keely Henninger and Tyler and Baby Lou proud, making Portland proud. Becca Windell, amazing human being that we're going to talk to today, took second. And then the incomparable OB-GYN physician, mom of two, Lauren Purette's 40 years old, did 3 procedures on Thursday before flying to Phoenix. Just a total baller. Didn't know she was in third until she finished. Didn't know she got a golden ticket.
Yeah, her video of getting the ticket is so cool.
Oh, if you want to cry, go look at that video on Aravaipa. Just phenomenally talented individuals. Men's side, Hayden Hawks put on a clinic. We should probably mention Hans Troyer. He ended up finishing 10th, but like helped push the pace all day. After winning Bandera, super cool, young 23, 24-year-old coming into the sport. Hayden took the win 2 minutes under Anthony Costales' course record, which is silly. Just like what a talent. Happy to see him back racing after knee surgery. Really cool story to follow on the way to Western States. Jupiter, a Mexican athlete, I think the first athlete from Latin America to get a golden ticket into Western States.
Yeah.
Just phenomenally talented. Ran in like Adidas road super shoes. Don't know how he had any traction out there. We asked him in the post-race interview, like, hey, like you're really good. And we know that you've won like everything in Mexico. Like, can you tell us a little bit about, like racing here versus racing there? And the translation was like, I am the champion of everything in Mexico. And we were like, yes. Yes, you are. So he, I think Dylan recorded an interview with him with a translator recently. So curious to actually hear that interview. Jupiter Herreras in second, and then Chris Meyers, young guy, SoCal guy, but recently moved to Boulder. He's come up short on some golden ticket races last year, so cool to see him get that third ticket. Like and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 on both sides needed the tickets and took them. So also just excited to see that actually play out. So bravo, hats off to you all. Absolutely insane running out there. I'm flabbergasted. So impressed. Okay, Keely, before we get to our interview, we should at least talk a little bit about the fact that you ran a race after pacing Rachel Drake to the finish line and victory, just missing your course record, actually, from the Black Canyon 100K from last year. One thing I'm really curious about is you like jumped into this race after pacing, and it's also like it's your first race back since Stoyanthenon, which is very different. And while you will say that I haven't been away from racing for that long, it's also just like, it's a public race. It's out in front of people that you know. It's out in front of the community. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like going in with whatever expectations you had and just like, I don't know. I think it's always hard to do that in a very public manner when you're like not 100% certain on like what you're going to get on the day.
Yeah. And I think for a little bit, I started contemplating that and questioning before the race, like, well, why am I doing this if I'm not going to do super well, or I have no clue how it's going to go? And I just kept coming back to the same answer. And for me, it was just to have fun and like race again, because to your point, Stoyanthenon didn't really feel like a race. It felt like a sufferfest, and it taught me a lot, but I was never like racing. I wasn't pushing enough to race. I just was trying to finish. And I know that I have some shorter races this season that require like a lot of racing and being tactical and being okay running with people and chasing people and being chased by people. And so I kind of just wanted to rip the Band-Aid off because I knew I would be down there anyways. And I love these trails and I love this race. And so I was like, you know what? I think it's okay for someone who treats this as a profession to enter races that aren't their A race and that they're not in A form for, because, you know, track and field athletes who go to the Olympics do this all the time. Other athletes do this all the time. They're okay going into a race knowing that it's not going to be their best potential. It's not going to be their best race. And I think that's a really good mental exercise for me, because that's normally not what I let myself do. And I normally get so in my head that I'm like, no, I need to win everything. That's the only goal. And that's not the case. And for this one, it was just to have fun and race. And it was so fun. Like I was struggling from the get-go, definitely did not replenish the glycogen I lost the night before from running for 2 hours and also stressing the whole time. But you know, I think it was a really good learning lesson for me because I just kept telling myself like, no, what is the goal? Have fun and get to the finish, like feeling like you can push and chase down people. And so I just kept asking myself like, well, what do I have to do that? And the answer for the first like 10 miles was just keep eating gels because I was bonking so hard. Like I just felt so gassed from the get-go. And so it was really fun. I just kept pushing through, like kept eating a ton. And then by like mile 20, 25, I was like, okay, you know what? I actually feel kind of normal finally. And so then I was able to just like turn on the jets a little bit and just be like, all right, well, who can I catch now? Because I've never been one to be able to like really rally in a race. And so I think that's a big weakness of mine as a runner. And so I think it was actually really good mental exercise to be like, all right, let's like go after it and see who you can catch and who you can hold off and who you can like pass in these last like 10 miles. And it was really, really fun. And yeah,
That's a big change from
boxes.
That's a big change from when I saw you at Bumblebee at mile 19.2, when you literally yelled at me, the first 10 miles were awful. Like, I just think that's a really cool reflection that you went from like absolutely maybe like not hating it, but being like, what is this mess, to being like, I'm in it. I'm in the mix. Like, I'm going to throw down as hard as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think that that's been one of the hardest things in my career. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, and I'm sure you guys have had this, where it's like, if the beginning of the race doesn't go well, it's really easy to just be like, well, whatever. Like, I'm going to just throw in the towel. Like, this isn't very fun. I'll just like slog to the finish. And I mean, those 10 miles were freaking awful, but I think like it was also like my goal wasn't to like win. And so I wasn't like dwelling on it a lot. It was just like, let's get the best out of yourself. Let's get through this and figure out what to do, because it's horrible and we don't want to feel horrible the whole time.
Can you tell the folks listening at home how many gels you consumed over the course of this thing?
Yeah, so I think I ended up counting them, and my first post was a little bit audacious. I think I said I'd ate like 24. I had 18 gels. So it ended up being like 70-ish grams of carbs per hour. And like that was very front loaded, because I think honestly, like when I saw you, Corrine, at mile 20,
you'd eaten like 10
I'd
gels.
eaten 12, 10 or 12. Yeah. And then I went back to like 2 to 3 an hour for the last bit because I felt more normal, but I definitely front loaded it with like 4 to 5 an hour and then downed it. So yeah, 18 gels, and really all pretty much the same flavors, like only rotated flavors a little bit, and then only did caffeine at the very end. So it was pretty gel heavy and not many other stimulant heavy.
That's so impressive. I'm like a little bit nauseous just thinking about it.
Next time you feel bonky at mile 5, you try it, and I bet it'll work.
I mean, I've experienced that, right? Like I remember like bonking on some run with Steven, and I was like, I feel awful. And he's like, well, maybe you should eat something. I was like, I just ate something. Like just like snapped back at him. And he's like, okay. And then I ate something and I was like, oh, actually, I feel like 100% better. Like it turns out every 20 to 30 minutes sometimes means like every 10 minutes until you can like rectify the situation so that you don't have a melty in front of your significant other in the middle of the woods. With that, I think we should dive into our meat and potatoes. We got to give Becca Windell a formal intro here. So the interview we're about to walk into is with the amazing Becca Windell. She most recently secured her golden ticket at the Black Canyons 100-kilometer race, placing second there. Epic battle. She was charging. It was so cool to see. She is also a PhD student at Colorado State University in the Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology Department, and the co-founder of Home on the Range Wildlife Research nonprofit that does research training and community science outreach in the Methow Valley on the east side of the North Cascades here in Washington State. And we can't wait for you all to meet her and hear all about her running and research endeavors, because she just got back from chasing deer around Nebraska. So I guess without further ado, I will step right out of the way.
So my name is Becca Windell, and I am a wildlife biologist, coach. I love running, and I split my time between Fort Collins, Colorado, where I am right now, working on my PhD, and then the lovely Methow Valley in North Central Washington.
A place near and dear to my heart, not that far from where I'm sitting right now. Though in the winter, it feels a lot further since the other road we take into the Methow Valley is closed for the winter. So
Yes, a little bit more of a hike in the winter.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more of a hike. Well, part of scheduling this interview with you is that we had like two narrow windows to get on the phone with you. And you were like, I can do this Thursday or I can do next Thursday because otherwise I will be catching deer for my PhD, which we were all like kind of scratching our heads. And then before this, we were actually sending your like Instagram posts back and forth between each other because we were like, she's legit catching deer. Like you were long lining deer via helicopter for your PhD, which I think should make anyone listening to this want to go do a PhD.
The CIO here at Auburn.
Uh-oh. Where's that coming from? Whoa.
That was my husband's computer.
I was
Sorry
like, that's a very deep voice. Okay.
He says he just yelled sorry from the background. Yeah, back to deer though.
Back to deer. So tell us a little bit about, obviously we know that you're a fast runner. We got to witness that firsthand at Black Canyon, but tell us a little bit more about long-lining deer via helicopter for a PhD.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty wild day for the deer and definitely not one that we take lightly as biologists because there's nothing else it could be other than feeling like an alien abduction for the day for that critter. But catching these animals so that we could take a bunch of samples. Specifically, my project's looking at this disease called chronic wasting disease, which if you're not familiar with it, it's, again, pretty wild disease. It's called a prion disease, but essentially there's misfolded proteins that are both then infectious and transmissible. So they replicate and basically turn brains into Swiss cheese in the deer family. And right now it's a lethal disease 100% of the time. And it's starting to have bigger impacts on deer populations, especially here in North America and mule deer in particular. So we're catching these animals to take samples. It's really hard to live test for CWD. So a couple of procedures to do that. And then putting a GPS collar. So just like one of our watches on the animals with a really long battery life. So we can track their movements across the landscape.
Yeah, that data's not on Strava, huh?
No, not on Strava.
I grew up in northwestern Wisconsin and we dealt with chronic wasting disease in the whitetail population there growing up. So it's a weirdly a disease near and dear to my heart in that sense that it was something that was incredibly impactful on our kind of like local ecosystem. I guess before we kind of, branch more into running, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of like how this fits into everything else that you do. I know that you are running a nonprofit kind of based out of the Cascades, and then, bridging into how you're balancing all those things.
Yeah. So I just started this deer CWD project working on my PhD at Colorado State University this past August. So this is a new endeavor right now. And prior to that, had co-founded a wildlife conservation nonprofit, like you said, Corrine, in the Methow with two dear friends and colleagues, Home Range Wildlife Research. And our organization, it's still really involved. And I'm very biased, but I love what we're doing because we're not only doing high quality research. So right now our flagship project is a lynx and wildfire project. We've had mega fires burn on both sides of the valley at different parts of different times. And like many places in the Mountain West, fires having a huge impact. But we're doing research. In addition to that, a real core part of our mission is to make sure that all that research we're doing is actively communicated broadly, but then also most specifically with our local community. So really doing a lot of outreach and then also involving local community members in the science through community science initiatives. We have another project that's really focused around that. It's a black bear human coexistence project where we have folks out on the landscape collecting the vast majority of the data to look at those interactions. And then the third pillar of our organization's mission is to provide training opportunities for aspiring biologists. So something that myself and then my co-founders, Carmen and Anna, had seen just throughout our careers working in wildlife was that there were so many incredibly passionate young folks coming out of university programs with tons of knowledge and interest and enthusiasm, but like not a lot of practical skills. And those are really hard to acquire, especially when you're coming from an urban area and haven't, backed up trucks and done a lot of stuff outside. So we offer training programs to develop really core field biology skills as well.
Yeah, driving a 15-passenger van or backing up a trailer definitely like acts a lot of jobs for me personally. So I completely relate
Well,
to
we can
that.
teach you, Corrine.
Sick. I'm coming over. We'll put all the cones up. I'll be a professional in no time.
Yeah, Becca. So I know that we were just talking offline about like all of us can now say the word decade to talk about like our past running experience. So obviously you're in your PhD program now, but this is not like right out of undergrad for you. So like where did this like PhD idea come from, and like what kind of led you to where you are now from when you actually left your undergrad?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a pretty non-traditional academic track. I, right out of high school, got really into bike racing. So I went to a semester of college and then decided to race bikes and didn't end up going back to school till I was 26 for my undergrad. And really feel fortunate at that point because animal behavior and animals is something that I've always been interested in. But I think when I was 18, it would have been like an exercise science degree because all I cared about was sport. So I got to come to, come to wildlife with, just knowing that it was a passion. And from undergrad, went into a master's program and then moved out to Washington and worked at as a research scientist at the University of Washington for a little while before starting this nonprofit. And then, just really, I think feeling like the one piece that was missing for me was a bit more, just wanted a little bit more rigorous training and stats and all the technical components of doing really good wildlife work. And then also, I really realized I love the academic environment too, and that just mentorship and, I guess I don't know how to say it best, but I love that environment of learning. There's not a lot of other places where 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds are interacting on a daily basis, just talking about cool, interesting stuff and trying to make change in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very unique environment. And to your point, like you can enter it at any time in your life and still be invigorated by all of those like minds around you who have so many different thoughts and different experiences. So I get that. And as a non-trad also, I totally respect what you're doing. Like there should be no timeline on when you go get like a PhD or an MD or whatever. It can be whenever.
No, I mean, it definitely like, I feel that I'm a bit older than a lot of my peers right now, but I also feel like grateful to be coming into it older too. So I would highly encourage it if anybody is looking for, continuing to learn anywhere in life, really.
Yeah, Steven's parents help with some of the citizen science projects in the Cascades. His dad, who's in his 70s, is always like, I've got to trek in to go change this game cam for this Wolverine project. And you're like,
awesome.
Okay, Tom, let us know if you need any help. Like, go get it, man. Which I just love that kind of overlap between the citizen science and the range of students that are in the field. We were reflecting a little bit on the fact that at Black Canyon, on the women's podium, you were sandwiched between two doctors, an MD, PhD just ahead of you, and another MD right behind you. And just this reflection that our sport is full of so many incredible people who are juggling many things, wearing all the hats. And we're wondering now, as you're kind of entering this PhD and really getting into the bulk of your research for this project, balancing that with your running, with, family time, with hanging out with the dogs, like how are you finding your ability to balance and juggle those different facets?
Yeah, I love that too. And it's something that really inspires me about this sport is it just feels like so many folks are doing a lot of cool stuff. And that just is a real tailwind as I do things as well. But yeah, I think more than anything, I lost my train of thought. What was your
more than
question?
anything?
Sorry.
Balancing. You got PhD on the brain right now.
Yeah. So I think balance wise, the biggest takeaway recently has just been that I don't ever feel like as much pressure about any one thing, which is really huge for me in general. So I don't know if like it's always balanced, but I just don't always feel like I have all my eggs in any one basket, which then makes me hold on a lot less tightly to any one thing. And it has just had really nice positive implications for actually having some sort of balance. if that makes any sense.
Oh, totally. And I think that like as we all get older too, that's an easier thing for us to lean into as opposed to the like 21-year-old versions of ourselves that I think even if our eggs were scattered in many baskets, it's still there's a different perspective there that comes with just like, I don't know, being a student later in life, being an athlete later in life, etc. So
100%. Like it's hard not to assign some sort of self-worth to any sort of outcome related to whether it's sport or academics or whatnot. And yeah, I guess that's where like the two together, I do balance each other out then, to not have anything holding too much weight.
yeah, and I've been joking that we will eventually give the people what they want, i.e., they want to hear about the epic battle at Black Canyon, but we'd kind of like to zoom out a bit more, as podcasters tend to do, and reflect on just kind of when you first found running and then kind of where and when trail running came into your life.
Yeah, so I mean, first found running probably when I was 8 years old. My grandpa was an avid 5K runner. He had this like immaculate closet with just folded race t-shirts. And yeah, I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So went out for my first mile run with my grandpa probably when I was 8. And then I couldn't quite make that whole mile running. And so I trained really hard until the next year when I visited him again. And yeah, he really just got me into it. So running from like a pretty young age in some ways. But then that I took a total turn in high school. I got really into, as I said before, bike racing. So did that then through my early 20s. And when I decided to retire from bike racing, I got a wonderful little dog named Josie, and she needed exercise. And we were living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. And Josie's really who got me into trail running. I was actually down in Boulder probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe more than that, but just running some of the trails, and I could like visualize my young Josie dog, who's now 14, just like launching off different rocks. And yeah,
I love that.
That's my real start to trail running, Josie.
Yeah, it's come full circle, and I think I actually have a question teed up about Josie, and we'll talk about her some more. But I think I'd like to reflect on that moment. You mentioned the cycling thing a couple times. You've mentioned retiring from it at 24. I myself have retired from one professional sport at 23, 24 as well, before being able to find something else that I'm really passionate about. And I think that hindsight and reflection is really powerful for so many of us as we like look back on different chapters of our life. And I'm wondering, this intense passion for cycling that I think also gave you probably a lot of independence as like a high schooler and a teenager, right? It lets you like explore the world around you really quickly. But at some point in time that turned from like this love and passion and excitement to a thing that you needed to step away from, that no longer had all the positive associations that you first found in it. And I'm wondering if we can just explore that a little bit from like I've got enough distance between me and this earlier chapter of my life.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love the way you framed that, because it really exactly was that. I remember the first time I like was riding the bus to school and just seeing bikes passing the school bus, be like, that is way faster. Like I should ride my bike to school when I was 14 or so. And then that just like you said, I grew up in downtown Chicago. So it just became this incredible way of getting to know my city. I was obsessed with bike messengers and like did that for a while. And that's kind of how I got into racing then. And yeah, but then it became increasingly more serious. And I think around 18 or so had a bigger breakthrough where all of a sudden I got a lot of attention with it as well. And with that attention, like that was just hard to manage in general. But then also just pressure on sport and outcomes for the first time. And yeah, to be honest, like had a really, I mean, I don't regret it by any means, but they were like probably the darkest years of my life too. Like once I had success, somewhere between 18 and 22 are just like really rough years. I've been really encouraged to hear that the sport seems like it's changing a bit, but at least like at that time, eating disorders were just, I think, pretty rampant. That was a huge culture and one that really affected me as I was riding bikes. And so, yeah, I was just, I think at 24 realized, even though I'd like come a ways, that I was never going to be fully healthy if I didn't step away from the sport, just because it was so ingrained in at least like my experience of the culture. I mean, I can remember clearly having one of my best races, and I think I missed like something by 5 seconds or something. And in the, yeah, one of the first things that somebody said to me was like, oh, if you weighed a little bit less, you could have won today, you know? So just those sorts of things, which then as a pretty impressionable young kid can really set a tone for where your focus should be. And it's not then the love and joy. Yeah. So,
and that's such a direct, like, that's like, that wasn't like a thinly veiled comment to you. That
no.
was like a very like, if A equals B, then B equals like, then B leads to C, versus like, I think a lot of parents and coaches and spectators don't realize that it's like things that are even like less intentional, less veiled can be like very, very impactful. Even saying like, oh, like you look really fast, and you're like, cool,
Yeah.
what I'm doing is working. But to have someone like straight up say that, which I think also just, yeah, speaks to kind of that, what has historically been a very toxic nature that has gone like hand in hand with cycling for a very, very long time. Keely does a lot of research into this space, looking at low energy availability. And I don't know if she wanted to add anything here, just kind of reflecting on that time period.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to hear how you felt like at 24 you had the courage to step away, and then how long do you feel like it took you to, I don't know, dissociate all those feelings and habits from, you know, when you got into running and now how you are as a runner? So kind of like a long-term question, but
definitely. You know, I had put like a lot of kind of in the middle of that bike racing phase, had taken some time to like, I mean, I ended up being in eating disorder treatment during that period. So that was like an initial step that then I think started to give me some perspective of what, yeah, just like, I guess, alternatives to life. Because I think it can be pretty myopic of this is my whole world when you're in those moments. But so it just felt clear to me that I was ready to do something different at that stage. I mean, I did get into running pretty shortly thereafter with Josie, and I didn't really have intentions to do it competitively at first. But yeah, Hillary, I mean, as we were starting, I was thinking about you and I racing together back then, and I mean, really enjoying that too. But I did race for a year or two, but had to step back at that point too, because I just realized like this was a sport that I loved too much to have sort of the same behaviors and patterns come back. And that was just, for me, like the competitive associations were just too strong with like performance means I need to do these things. So yeah, I really just like had to take a bigger step back from sport for quite a few years. And it wasn't until I was, the last 3 or 4 years that I really felt ready to come back and compete from a good place in terms of my own health and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's really like noble of you to be able to realize all of that also and take that break. Do you feel like now looking back, and also now how you fuel and train now, do you notice like a big difference in how you feel and how like your energy levels are now that you are like practicing better strategies?
100%. I mean, I think it's like such a cool, I love the dialogue that's happening right now in our sport, especially around fueling. I mean, just again, like contrasts when I was cycling, you know, I had coaches tell me go for a 3-hour ride and don't eat anything, you know, to work on your fat metabolism and whatnot. But now I like 400 calories an hour at Black Canyons, and I felt freaking amazing the whole time. Which like, I really just, I know it's talked about time and time again, but like, it's just so freaking important. Like, and it changes everything. It makes, not only like changes your performance, but also your outlook on the entire thing. Like, I really feel like you can have the most positive experience when you are genuinely fueling your efforts, taking care of yourself, like, just coming as the most whole person to these events too, not like broken down kind of shell of yourself, which just ultimately can lead to a lot of weird thoughts and
Oh my goodness, totally. It's like I think you said it really well. Like, we're not only fueling to perform, like, I think the fueling increases our ability to like be our whole self. Like, we have the ability to like fire on all cylinders and like troubleshoot when things go wrong and like show up for our partner and show up for ourselves and all of these things that I don't think are talked about as much and also are not as tangible. But yeah, it's cool to hear you say that. And I hope that that will, resonate with some of our listeners as well as they're finding their fueling journeys too.
Yeah, it literally makes me want to like bottle up these experiences so that people can like just like see them without having to experience them. Like as you were talking through your timeline, I was like, yep, that tracks. Like, yep, did that step as well. Cool. Like, didn't take care of myself for a long time as a runner because if I cared, that was like a slippery slope to, where I had been with biathlon, which was like a very negative place. So I like didn't take care of myself in my early years of running because that was too closely related to a previous thing. And I wasn't strong enough to just be like, well, I'm not going to run or race for a little bit. It was like, I'm just going to see what happens. That whole faffing about was not ideal. So hopefully there is some reflection there for other people too, who I hope have never experienced any of these things and can glean from our lessons and not follow down the same rabbit holes. Because
it's not worth it. Just eat. It's life is so much better.
Life is so much better. Well fueled. You've mentioned Josie a couple times, and I actually think that you have 2 dogs. Is that right?
I do. Yeah, I should not ignore Riley. So two pups, Josie and Riley.
Yeah, and I think we're unanimously a dog person podcast. Sorry, my cat friends. But I think that even like so Josie clearly sparked a lot of joy in your life and was a being that I think kind of helped spur this current chapter that you're in. I think so much so that your coaching business was actually named for Josie. So I'd love to
Josie's
hear
coaching.
I love it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, just like how, this little furry being that like is like, I don't know, brings you so much joy and allowed you to kind of like reflect on sport and athletics and moving outside and what seems to be like a very positive way.
Yeah. I mean, like maybe it sounds cheesy, but that little dog changed my life. Like she's just so phenomenal. So I got her when she was about a year old, from the Boulder Humane Society. And she's just this like perfect little athlete, kind of stoic, doesn't really take any nonsense, but also just a total sweetheart and a pal. And yeah, I really just like, it was so incredible to be able to get into trail running alongside this dog who just brought so much joy to every single run. I mean, to this day, she's 14 now. She's definitely starting to slow down, which is a bit of a bummer, but she's running, she still loves to run, even those little bits, and the whole time has her little helicopter tail going. And just like that, having that little signal of joy and watching her butt the whole time is, it's just, it makes it so nice to realize like, that we're just out there exploring, moving together, sharing the experience together. And I mean, I'm just going overkill a little bit, but I just love her so much.
We joke in our household a lot. It's really hard. I mean, obviously like there are antidepressants in the world for a reason, but like it's so much harder for me to be sad when I've got my little 4-legged friend with me who just is like so silly and goofy and like seems to know when I need to pick me up. Like the perfectly timed zoomies. You're like, you knew that I needed to see you just like lose all control of your body because you're so happy.
100%. And that's actually Riley, our other dog's role. She's a Malamute hound mix and is just a weird goober and total goofball. She actually doesn't like running all that much. So it's almost, I mean, and I almost appreciate that a lot about her too, that she is just like flipping things around the house and zoomies, but longer runs is not her jam too. So it's fun to see both their styles too.
You need to have that couch potato love in your life. We joke that we stole Petey from The Good Life. Now she like only gets fed twice a day and like has to go for a run. And it's like she'd rather just like lay in a sunny patch in the house and like just like sleep all day. Well, we're like, no, we're gonna go outside and run for 2 hours now. It's nice to have an animal who's like, no, we can actually just like relax a little bit.
Yeah, let me lay my head on your lap.
You can't get up now. When we joke that when you've got a dog on you, time no longer exists. It's like, oh, sorry, like time stands still during those moments. I guess we'll slowly give the people what they want and talk a little bit about Black Canyon, but in part we're talking about Black Canyon with this kind of like injury reflection as well, because while you've had like a good like 3 to 4 years of like feeling really healthy running, we know that you've been dealing with some injury, the injury roller coaster that we're all too familiar with. You know, you've come up short on a golden ticket before. You actually were pretty close in 2021 at the Canyons Endurance Run 100K. And then actually earlier this year, back in September, you led the Grindstone 100K early on before removing yourself from the race kind of due to this lingering injury feeling, the thing that you had been struggling with for kind of like the whole year prior to that. And so we're wondering if you can walk us through a little bit of what that past season looked like.
Yeah. I mean, Corrine, we probably should have started a support group for pelvis
people. Yeah.
Pelvis people. Cause gosh, yeah. All right. Sorry to hear about your membership, Keely, but yeah. I mean, I think like, so I really can't tell you what has been wrong. Something nebulous in my pelvis for the last 2 years, which has just taken, so fun. Yeah. So really challenging, like you said, like feel grateful that I've had, you know, my general health throughout this whole period. But yeah, physically the last 2 years have been pretty rough. I've seen probably, I was trying to count when I was running, but like, I think 3 different orthopedic PTs, a pelvic floor PT, chiropractors, you know, Rolfers, medical doctors. And it's just been a lot of, having to maintain belief and put together little pieces of the puzzle, getting a little bits of information from different places, and really just trying to figure out what will help to make my pelvis happy and stable again. And yeah, gosh, I feel so grateful that I seems like I turned a bigger corner. What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago at Black Canyons? I mean, I'm elated with how the race went in general, but like, I can't even tell you how happy I am that I just like finished 100K and, you know, can run again afterwards. Like that's
normal
the biggest
sore versus
win.
Pelvic pain. You're like, oh, I'm normal sore. That's great. I'll take that any day.
100%. So like, honestly, that was just the biggest win of everything. Cause I mean, I really feel for anybody going through a long chronic injury that just doesn't have a clear diagnosis, and you don't really know what your prognosis is going to be. So yeah, it's been a journey, but just feeling really grateful to be back here.
I think the roller coaster is all too real for many of us, where it's not a clear cut injury scenario. We've joked a lot on this podcast that we're quote unquote, we're obviously, people are listening to this, not watching it. We're done learning. Like, we don't want to learn anymore. We're so sick and tired of people being like, you're going to learn so much from this experience. It's going to be great. No, we're done. We don't want setbacks anymore. We'd love for things just to be smooth sailing. But in that vein, we do slowly learn things through this process. And we're wondering, you know, having dealt with so much uncertainty, having, you know, so much joy and a great run in the Arizona desert recently, like what have you been able to kind of take away as future learnings from this kind of roller coaster injury?
Yeah, I mean, I think like my biggest takeaways were just you have to keep believing and investing in yourself and doing that really annoying PT work and just iterating. Like ultimately there's never going to be like a silver bullet for these sorts of injuries. So just, really, even when it's hard, keeping that belief going and continuing to try noodle things. And that can be both on the side of, different therapies or opinions or whatever, to also just changing your training and seeing what might work better too. I mean, I think one of the reasons this has all worked out too is I totally changed my training the last block, and I pretty much just ran and did some strides, and no like workouts or intensity, or very limited amounts of that. So just iterating and believing and really knowing that if one day it'll all come together, hopefully. And even if it falls apart again, it's worth it, to have those moments.
Yeah, it's so scary when you're like, you know what? I'm going to stop forcing this thing that I think should work and like instead just like taking a step back and eliminating the things that were kind of, where you were bumping up against the wall a little bit, i.e. it's like, yeah, maybe, doing true intensity on your feet wasn't working. And so having to like completely feel like you're reinventing the wheel is super intimidating, but ultimately, got you through a very healthy block, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, it's good. And yeah, like you said, Corrine, knowing when to step back and also just take like 2 weeks totally off to be like, I can't handle this anymore either. Those are important, just as important times too as trying. Sometimes you need to not try too.
Yeah, not trying is hard, but they're good. They're good moments to kind of reflect on. I don't know, just like giving yourself grace.
Yep.
And we watched that grace play out in just like the most brilliant performance at Black Canyon. The people who knew what you're capable of were like losing their minds and were so darn excited for you. It was really fun being on the live feed and having the texts and the live chat roll in of people cheering for you from all over the place. But I also know that like your coach has been on the record of saying that in your pre-race call that your B goal was to get a golden ticket and your A goal was to win the darn thing. And I just love that so much. It's like no, like, I don't know, the best poker hand ever. And so I'd love to have you walk us through, getting to that start line with that type of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like what does it hurt is sort of my philosophy. Like that's definitely those were my goals. And so why not go for it? I think you just have to believe in yourself and what you're capable of, and at least give yourself the chance to do it. And I don't know, I think this again, like just being a little bit older too, like totally okay if I didn't hit any of those goals. Like my C goal was just to finish, and that I would have also been like perfectly, I would have been so excited about that too, as I said earlier. So yeah, but at the same time, like I just this sport I love so much, and I love how folks are competing together out there, and it just like I love racing. So yeah, I guess just hard not to have those big dreams and go for it. And yeah, I guess like going into this race, I definitely believe those things were possible, and it's fun coming out of it and having that like I believe kind of be like all caps believe now. But you got to take those little steps to then be able to reinforce things for the future too.
I love that. A goal, win, B goal, golden ticket, C goal, finish. It's just like this, like, but like they're there for it, which is so cool. I think that hopefully people can take that forward to their next event from a spectator's perspective. It was really kind of cool, like watching the women's race play out. Like it was this moment at like the halfway mark where we saw you come through all smiles, by the way, just like so happy to be at the Deep Canyon Ranch aid station. But you were about, I think, 3 minutes down on Rachel Drake, 6 minutes down on Heather Jackson, who like time trialed the first 50K of the race. And then all of a sudden we got word from Rachel's crew, because Liam was Instagramming on course with Rachel, that all of a sudden, like, not only did you bridge to Rachel, but the two of you bridged to Heather, and we like lost our minds. Like it was so cool. And so I'm wondering if we can have like a peek behind the curtain and like understand, was this just like your race plan playing out perfectly, or like walk us through that moment of like all of a sudden being with Rachel and then all of a sudden Heather Jackson comes back to you guys. Like that had to be wild.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just like from the starting point, the folks at Aravipa did such a good job, and it was so cool to be part of this race where like every aid station you came into, there were just so many people. The energy was like unreal. And yeah, to be honest, like that's just the best fuel in the whole world, is having that sort of energy as you're coming through aid stations. The first like part of the race was pretty sloppy and slow, and honest, I had no idea where I was. And I think like a lot of us just had initial thoughts of like, oh God, like what, this is so slow. I don't feel good. It's terrible. But just then coming into that first aid station and like feeling super energized by everybody that was there. So yeah, I mean, I think honestly, that was where I just started to race a little bit. So coming out of the Bumblebee aid station around mile 20 and felt good and was running. So I didn't have a plan necessarily. It was just like, make sure you're running sustainably, but well, and fueling and all that jazz. And then was really surprised coming into, like, to be perfectly honest, coming into the next aid station, Deep Canyon. I can't remember.
Yeah,
exactly.
Deep Canyon Ranch. It's that
Deep
like
Canyon Ranch
50K mark or so.
Yeah. So coming into that one again, energy was awesome. And I remembered seeing Rachel coming out of that, like she was departing as I was coming in, and just being like, oh, okay, I'm like further up than I thought. So yeah, just energized again by that and kept steady moving up. And then joined Rachel just past the Black Canyon aid station. And it was super fun to then just like rally together for quite a few miles. I mean, it must have been close to 15 miles or so. And yeah, just like watching her do her thing, getting to Heather together, passing, really just like having fun running flowy, cool desert single track together. It was just pure joy. So yeah, I don't know if that like fully answers your question, but
no, it seems like you just
it was
like
a good time.
You executed on you had a great day, you fueled yourself, you like were finding joy out there, particularly as you built into the race. Like, you didn't shut down in the first 10 miles when things were sloppy and awkward. Like you kind of let things build, which is just really impressive. And actually the next question I had teed up for you kind of spoke to that, like those miles you got to share with Rachel. She's been very kind of public about saying that she loves to like race with in all caps, her competitors, like getting to spend miles kind of, maybe not elbow to elbow because you're on a single track. So someone's got to be in front, but like getting to share time together with the people she's racing with seems to really fuel her and like really inspire her. And so it sounds like you had that same experience where like those 15 miles or so you got to share with her were just like really blissful.
100%. Yeah. And like, I feel like I haven't done a ton of races recently, but it hasn't been like that common to be able to really run alongside somebody. And it made it so much more fun and enjoyable. And I mean, just adding that little element of like tactics and whatnot too, which is not something I was necessarily thinking about, but like it just gamifies it a little bit more too, so that you can share that experience and play off of each other. And I don't know, that just, I feel like adds a whole nother awesome layer to sport. It's not only like performing to your best, but then getting the best out of each other and having a little game of chess in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think we all will say the same thing, but like the sport is trending to that. This is relatively normal now. And like you can kind of plan on finding yourself with someone else 80% through a race and you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, yeah, it's really cool. The sport right now is growing so much that it's fun to be able to race with the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a question on that note, like you, like having that be kind of a relatively new experience, right? Of being like, oh, I'm going to run with this person for a prolonged period of time. Like how did, you came into the race, as you said, the goal was to win this thing. And then the B goal was to get a ticket. And all of a sudden you and Rachel Drake are at the front of the race in 1 and 2, and you're having an amazing time. Like the two of you are just like having a blast, it seems like, but kind of how does that frame up against this, like, you're still racing, right? Like you're still racing for the win. You're still racing for a golden ticket. Like, how do you, I guess, there's a juxtaposition there, right? Of like having just the best absolute time with like a new pal and like being like, I still want to win this thing.
Yeah. I guess for me, like just that having fun component would ultimately lead to the best, like being able to win, let's say. So I just don't think they're at odds with each other. If anything, I just think it's like that little extra boost that you really can use to try to do your best. Yeah, I definitely stated that goal. And like, I don't know if I did fully like internally believe it too. So I really was just focused on like having the best time and was thrilled with how everything was going. So that was my prevailing feelings.
Good. I think that's like that's a very like I don't know that's the ideal scenario where it's like having a good time and having fun and running to your potential will ultimately lead to those big goals that you spoke into existence. A crazy moment of having a live stream is that we actually got to witness the moment where you and Rachel, the elastic kind of broke a little bit. And it was this moment where you guys were crossing the river and Rachel made this grab to what seemed to be a very pokey bush and pulled herself out of the river and like, just like ascended this hill very rapidly. And you missed the branch, it seemed, and actually took a bobble back into the river. And we watched like Liam like kind of go around you and bridge back up to Rachel. Liam had been kind of, it seemed like taking a step back so the two of you could run together as opposed to him pacing her. We just love to hear a little bit from that, like your actual point of view of that moment of like, did you realize that like the elastic was breaking there? Or did you like, how did that feel to be like, okay, that little moment like has created this gap?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the moment, I didn't really like realize what so this is where I guess I'm just so impressed with like Rachel and how amazingly professional she is and doing all her homework with the course too, because she had like a plan for that. Yeah. And like I think that's where I could kind of like see myself watching this like plan unfold too. And that was so cool, to be honest. Like this is a great, yeah, she played it so well. And it was really cool to watch her just be the amazing like racer that she is. Cause yeah, I did not know what we were going through and definitely like fumbled going both in and out of that creek crossing. And remember like starting like that she had gotten a bit of a gap and starting to chase her and just be like, oh, she just started running for the first time, like hard, which
that
was
2:35 marathoner came out all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Which was just so cool. Like, it was just, I feel like really privileged to be able to watch somebody like that race the way she did. So yeah, I mean, I would have had to put like a big effort in and just getting through at that stage was like, I was happy to keep plugging along consistently. So
yeah. Those are those moments where you're like, well, my legs still work. That's all that matters. And from there, you guys crested that climb. You came through the kind of 10 mile to go aid station. I think you picked up your husband as a pacer and made him work for it the last 10 miles. But I'd love to hear.
You guys were charging.
Yeah.
Like I was checking over my shoulder.
Keely was scared the whole time. Rachel kept being like, Keely, is she there? Is she there? And Keely's like, I'm looking. Stop looking. You keep running. I will look for you. Don't fall down. But those moments are really cool too, where it's like it's like where's your brain there? Are you thinking about the podium? Are you thinking about where third is? Are you thinking about where first is? Are you running scared? Are you soaking it up? Like what was that last 10 miles? Because it can be all those things and none of those things.
Yeah, it probably did feel like a lot of those things. I think my coach David told me, he was at the aid station too, that there was a pretty big gap between us and third. So I felt like not running scared necessarily, but also just like trying to keep pushing forward. And I definitely had hit like a little bit of a wall coming out of that aid station. So yeah, I think just like trying to give my best, on the final climb was, all I could really focus on. But then also, like you said, I got to share the last 10 miles then with my husband, which he's always been so supportive of what I do. And then be able to have those little bits together too. And, like coming off the last climb, just cresting and like looking out on the big saguaro cactus forests ahead. Like it's just really cool as the sun was setting and I think soaking it in then a bit. So trying to like enjoy our time coming down off the final climb. It was pretty incredible, like I said, to just open into the final valley, like that led down into the finish line, where it really was just this forest of saguaro cactuses. And Simon and I just started kind of flowing down that last descent and then rallied a bit into the finish right as the sun was setting, which was pretty magical to be honest. And yeah, so I think at that stage, just really soaking things up. I mean, I remember crossing the finish line and then seeing all these incredible people. Yeah, folks who like Corrine, like you, who I'd never met before, but was so excited, had known through friends and sharing text messages, which was awesome.
Your friends were losing it and texting me, and I was like, I have to go show Becca this text from Steph because Steph is losing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so like it gave me a whole nother layer of feeling really grateful for this sport and the community, and that those were the finish line feelings that were going around, because it's truly special about our sport. Like I can't emphasize it enough. Like our sport is so rad, and the people who are in this sport are so rad, and that's like what keeps me coming back time and time again.
Yeah,
is those feelings.
It truly is. I'm probably outing Steph a little bit by saying this, but she was like, when can I ask Becca if I can come to Western States? She's like, how long should I wait before I ask Becca? And I was like, you'll figure it out. You just buy her some more gels, and I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, Steph gave me like 10 pounds of gels from her race at Javelina, and that's literally like what I've been eating the last 4 months. So big shout out to Steph Bennett, nutrition sponsor.
Unofficial nutrition sponsor. Speaking of Western States, though, you got yourself a golden ticket, which is pretty darn sick. I know Craig was like in the finishing chute, like waiting to pounce to give you guys golden tickets, it felt like, which was really probably very surreal. Like, how excited are you to be heading to that big dance in June?
I'm so excited. I mean, the past 3 years I've watched the live stream and just like not only sat there watching it, wanting to be there, but like, oh, it hurts to like not be there type feeling. So yeah, I'm just thrilled. I mean, again, like going back to community, it's just seems like such a cool gathering spot to celebrate ultra racing here in North America. And there's just so much history behind it that I am just thrilled to participate. So yeah, very excited. I'm going to have so many of my close friends and family there with me too, which is going to be really special to share that experience with them as well. And yeah, I'm just jazzed.
We're so excited. I'm so excited. It'll be really fun to be there Western States Week and get to, I don't know, the PNW. I know that technically we're loaning you to Colorado right now, but the PNW is very proud to have you and Rachel grab those golden tickets, along with Lauren Puretz of Colorado Springs at the Black Canyon 100K. Just like, I can't wait. The hype is already building.
Me neither. It's going to be awesome.
Yay. We kind of like to end all of our interviews, independent of what we've been talking about, with this kind of like final reflection question. And it's pretty simple. And it's this idea of like, you've lived a lot of different chapters. You've had ups and downs with sport. And so we like to reflect on this notion of like, what do you know, or what is something that you know right now to be true that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the thing that I know to be true is that you're just enough exactly the way that you are, and you don't need to like prove anything to anybody. You don't need to be scared of chasing your dreams and what like people might think of that. To just like try to believe in, and maybe believe isn't the right word, but just to trust your gut on what you know is what you know are the things that really draw at your heartstrings, and go for it, because it just is such a fulfilling life to shoot your shot. And it's okay if you fail along the way too, because those, when you do drop the ball or something doesn't work out how you planned it, you learn a ton from that. And then also like you have those high moments on the flip side that are just so worth it.
Becca's amazing. I don't think we need to say any more. Society Slam. I guess before we Society Slam, we should give another shout out to the folks over at the feed, the people presenting. I love that word, presenting this podcast for 2024. Who has had a nutrition win? Obviously, Keely had a nutrition win by consuming nearly 2 boxes of gels out on the 60 kilometer at Black Canyon. Hilly, have you had any nutrition wins recently?
Yeah, even though it's like at this time of year, I'm not really doing as like the longer long runs I'm used to. And yeah, it's like I'm enjoying having some snacks on some 90-minute runs. Like it's great.
Yeah,
I think that's a win because
I think it is a win, right? Practicing it, just like I've had to practice it on my shorter runs, because it turns out if I don't practice it there, I like barely handle my long runs. So turns out under fueling any of your training does not bode well for you from a recovery perspective. Actually, we just had an article come out over on freetrail.com that Ruby Wiles wrote for us about carbohydrates being queen or king, our reigning fuel, to both fuel you to performances, but also to help you get a jumpstart on recovery. So if you want to go check that out over at freetrail.com, highly recommend it. It seems like our first Society Slam is a shout out actually from Tarawera. And I can take this one. Hey team, and I will say, preface this, I love Tarawera. I actually was initially going to go run there and help lead some women's specific panel stuff ahead of the race, but opted out just due to some other kind of personal life stuff. But listener wrote in and said, hey team, I was at Tarawera this weekend supporting my partner. They ran a great Women in Trail half-hour talk where Caitlin Fielder did an amazing job bringing up how important it is for female athletes to keep their periods. This was out on the village green in front of all the athletes and supporters while people were checking in the day before, not just a private session. And you could feel the discomfort from some of the audience, but I was so proud of her for raising the topic. So just wanted to give her a shout out. She also won the 50K, another amazing Kiwi athlete tearing it up, but really cool to hear that they got that panel off the ground. And it was well received by most in the audience, maybe not everyone, but big kudos to Caitlin Fielder. Hilly or Keely, you want to take that next kind of one, verging off of the Fact or Fiction podcast we released last week?
Yeah, Keely, that's you.
Yeah. So I actually got a couple of these emails in my personal as well. And then this one came to the Trail Society feed. So I think this will help a lot of you. We got a lot of love around the Fact or Fiction on the latest podcast around the menstrual cycle and not getting a period. This question is, for those of us on birth control who don't get a period, I have an IUD. What are some other markers besides getting a period we can look for as signals that we are doing okay from an energy availability / fueling enough / not overtraining perspective? First of all, great question. Second of all, I don't think there's going to be like a really sexy 100% accurate answer, unfortunately, yet. But I think the research is there and it's coming. And so I think we're going to have better metrics to measure this in the future. However, I think there are a lot of things you can start to take note of on your own and maybe like write in a journal or write alongside your training log so that you can track your own trends over time and see how these things change. And so some of the things you can look for that sometimes are indicative of potentially being in low energy availability or being in overtraining or not feeling enough could be things around the following. So you can check for decreases in libido, which is AKA sex drive. You can look for abnormal changes in your sleep patterns, increased irritability, decreases in your running or sport performance. So that would be like, running at a similar pace that's normally really easy for you, all of a sudden feeling super hard, and that being a trend for a really long time. You could have increased thoughts of depression or anxiety. You could be, this is one I kind of just added in there as like anecdotal from a lot of athletes, and I think it's something that's kind of tangible, is like waking up really, really hungry all the time. That's probably not a great sign. Changes in gastrointestinal function, and then compulsive feelings around exercise. This one's kind of new, but it's been shown to be highly correlated to low energy availability and could be something that you could question yourself. So, you could ask yourself, why am I running today? And if the answer is like, oh, I'm training for this race or all of these things, or I want to get outside or all these things, but maybe another answer would be like, because I really feel like I need to. If that's like always the reason you run, that could be a red flag for being very compulsive around your exercise. And so those are all things you can kind of look for. Again, I'll put this all in the show notes, but you could kind of just like add these notes to your little log. And if you start seeing trends where all of a sudden you're having decreased libido for multiple weeks at a time, or you're having, all of a sudden changes in your GI function paired with changes in sleep, and you're watching these patterns, these are all just data you can find on your own, and then use this to question, what does my training load look like right now? Am I getting enough calories in? And look at more holistically at your training and hopefully be able to determine if maybe you're not meeting your energy demands before anything detrimental really happens. Any insights on that there, Corrine or Hill?
I just think it's super important. And I'm glad that we continue to yell and sometimes rant about it on our podcast TED Talks.
Yeah. And I think honestly I think really a really good one is the compulsion and the feelings around exercise. I think that's also a really good piece. It's like sometimes if I'm feeling, if I'm like, am I in a rut or am I overdoing it? Right. So, and it's like, and I think Corrine, you've talked about this on the pod before too, but like, if you taken a rest day, does that make you feel anxious or like revitalized? Right. So we want to aim for like the revitalization and not like, oh my gosh, I can't take a break from this. Cause then I think there's something else going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we like avoid, we all ignore the red flags of like exercise addiction, exercise compulsion. And I think that will become a more and more critical topic alongside, REDs and low energy availability, et cetera. So.
Yeah. And then one other thing that I'd be remiss to not say is that, clinically, there is a questionnaire called the LEAF-Q, and they're developing one called the LEAN-Q for males. That's a really good tool used for diagnosing risk for low energy availability. And while you might not want to give yourself a clinically validated questionnaire, you could.
You could. If you need the data, if that's what it's going to take, maybe that is what you need.
And it accounts for birth control. So it does account for you being on birth control. So it could give you a good glimpse into how you're doing. Or you could, over breakfast, give it to one of your friends who maybe you're thinking is in that state.
I mean, I think objective measures are actually pretty important with regard to this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it helps you actually see it. Okay, I think we got one more big shout out that Hilly's going to tackle.
And it's my fave. I should have put the name on this here, but I literally laughed when I read this in the comments. So someone says, just saying, if Trail Society and or Rachel Drake came out with a Big Dogs Gotta Eat merch, I would so buy it. That makes 2 of us, and I think 3 of us, 4 of us. So
I think we need crew neck sweatshirts and 5 panel hats. Like nice crew necks. Yeah. And really cool 5 panel hats. We'll consult Rachel Drake for licensing. I think Keely is part of this licensing deal, and we'll see what we can make happen. I think that's amazing. Okay, we'll go ruminate some more merch ideas. Maybe we'll make some stickers or something really fun. And until next time, we'll see you guys out on the trails.